Capone's liquor stocks and destroying some of it, but so did a lot of other Prohibition agents and law enforcement officers. I think it's very unlikely that Al Capone knew who Eliot Ness was or ever heard the name.
When the book was completed, Eliot and I sat and talked about actually what his role had been. I asked Eliot, did you go on raids? He said, no. He said, I didn't go on any raid. He says, I would go down to the scene afterwards sometimes. In fact, Eliot told me that he never met Capone at all. He said the only time that he had ever seen Capone almost face-to-face, he went down to the station when the FBI people were taking him to Atlanta into prison and saw Capone chained to another prisoner walking onto the train with the FBI. And he said that's the only personal view he had ever had of him.
The Eliot Ness remembered today is largely a mythical character. The bribes, the death threats, the confrontations with Capone, there's no proof any of it ever happened. Yet the real work of Eliot Ness did have some impact.
Number one, they cut the income of the Capone outfit. He was more than an irritant. He was more than an annoyance. He was a major force. Number two, it sent a message. It sent a message not only to Capone and his people and other organized crime outfits, it also sent a message to the people that there was hope. There was hope that law enforcement would eventually prevail. That's what made Ness special.
Even as the true Ness emerges, the myth endures.
I never saw Eliot Ness, and he wasn't anywhere near as active as he was reputed to be later. I don't want to discourage him because he was a force for the element, and his reputation was a force for cleaning up crime, so I was for him. I'm for him yet.
It makes the era much more palatable for us to see it in terms of good and evil, to imagine that there was actually somebody who was going to be an avenging angel, who was going to be incorruptible, who was going to clean up Chicago, and who was going to do it with guns. And that's all very dramatically satisfying. The reality, the historical record shows us that there wasn't any one person like that, and the people who were devoted to cleaning up Chicago weren't particularly glamorous and exciting.
Americans were captivated by the story of the Untouchables. To some extent, it represented the type of law enforcement that never was, but perhaps should have been in the late 1920s, the 1930s, when Al Capone was getting all the headlines. I mean, the gangsters were the folk heroes of Chicago. What America thirsted for was the all-American hero and the blood and guts story of a man who fearlessly went after Al Capone and fired the Tommy guns and busted into the breweries. The real story was much more boring.
The Eliot Ness stories still had merit because it demonstrated to the youth of today that crime can be stopped by clean-cut, hard-working, energetic, brave law enforcement officers. So if the Ness theory comes across to the world as being the good guys win, well, then it's fine.
Eliot Ness wasn't the man who got Capone, but the image of the untouchable, a fearless and incorruptible agent, helps to ease our memory of the corrupt Prohibition years. In our timeless search for heroes, Eliot Ness still answers that call.